There is a kind of silence that unsettles the world. It is the silence of a woman who no longer waits. Not for love, not for permission, not for the echo of her own worth in someone else's voice. She wakes without a whisper beside her, and still her soul sings, but the world watches in confusion. How can she be so at peace, alone? This is the question we will explore together. And if you stay until the end, a deeper question will emerge within you. What do I mistake as missing that might actually be my mirror? Let us begin. There is a silence that does not seek to be filled. It is the silence chosen not by accident, but by awareness. When a woman decides to live alone, not from bitterness or retreat, but from intention and self-respect, she does not descend into emptiness. She returns to essence. To the untrained eye, her life may seem like a room with too much space. Quiet mornings, empty chairs, a single plate at the table. But the truth is more subtle. Her space is not hollow, it is sacred. The emptiness others fear, she sees as freedom. This is not absence, it is presence distilled. There is a tree called the ginkgo. In autumn, its leaves turn gold, and in a single night, all fall. The tree stands bare, exposed, and to the casual observer, lifeless. Yet it is not dying, it is deepening. What is visible is only the surface. Beneath the cold soil, the ginkgo's roots are working silently, drawing strength, preparing. Come spring, will bloom not because the world demanded it, but because it followed its own rhythm. So too is the life of a woman who lives alone without a man. She is not waiting for someone to complete the scene. She is attending to her roots, inner garden. A solitude that is not the absence of love, but the presence of deep relationship with the self. A Zen parable tells of a monk who spent 10 years meditating in a mountain cave. When asked why he endured such stillness, such solitude, he replied, "I did not come here to be alone. I came here to meet who was always with me." Solitude, then, is not isolation. It is introduction. It is the space in which a woman reclaims her name, her breath, her heartbeat, where she can move without needing to be witnessed, speak without needing to be heard, and feel without needing to be fixed. In the forest, the strongest trees are not the ones most exposed to the sun, but the ones that have endured seasons without it, growing deeper, darker, more anchored. When a woman lives without a man, it is not a declaration against men. It is a declaration for herself. She does not reject connection. She simply refuses to offer her peace as a payment for companionship. Confucius once said, "Superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions." But the superior woman, one might say, is silent in her presence, vast in her being. She fills the room not with her voice, but with the stillness that others lean into, and yet solitude is not always soft. There are nights when the silence presses close, when the world outside celebrates in pairs, and the heart wonders if something essential is missing. But she learns to stay, to breathe into that ache, not as a wound, but as a doorway. In time she sees, the age is not for someone else, it is for a deeper union within. Watch the rain on a window pane. It comes alone, drop by drop. Yet it forms rivers, nourishes roots, creates movement. What is alone is not necessarily lonely. What stands apart is often preparing to lead. She is not a woman waiting for life to begin. She is the beginning, the axis upon which her world turns. She does not beg for love. She blesses it should it arrive. And if it does not, she walks on, not empty, but whole. There is a second truth that emerges gently, like a lotus from the mud, that the strength found in solitude is not brute force, inward mastery, a kind of invisible discipline that weaves through every moment of the solitary life. To rise without the pull of another's hand, to sleep without the comfort of a familiar breath beside her, eat without shared laughter or conversation. These are not sorrows, they are sharpenings. like the blade of a sword that is polished not through noise but through steady, patient movement. Consider the story of the Shaolin student who asked his master how to gain strength. The master handed him a bowl of water and told him to carry it across the mountain every day without spilling a drop. The student grew impatient. He wanted training, not chores. But years later, he realized that discipline had trained his balance, his focus, his breath. He had become strong not by force, but by quiet repetition. So it is with the woman who lives alone. Her discipline is not dramatic. It lies in the making of tea with care, the folding of sheets with presence, the long walks without a destination. These moments, invisible to others, shape the spine of her spirit. She is not loud. She is aligned. In daily life, this might look like choosing to wake at sunrise even when no one sees. Maintaining a routine not for show but for soul. Speaking to herself with tenderness in the mirror, not as performance, but as prayer. The world may applaud the woman who appears busy, desired, surrounded. But it is the woman who maintains stillness in the storm, who walks with rhythm in silence, that truly holds power. Tao Te Ching says, "He who conquers others is strong, he who conquers himself is mighty." And she, in her solitude, conquers the impulse to be distracted, to be filled, to be chosen. And in doing so, she becomes unshakable. Watch the wild deer. It does not need a herd to be majestic. Its steps are deliberate, its presence is alert. It does not apologize for its solitude. It embodies it. A woman alone can learn from this, to move not to impress, but to express. To sit not to be noticed, but to notice. To become so deeply present that her very life becomes a meditation. There will be days when discipline falters. When the silence feels cold rather than clear, when the bed feels too wide and the night too long. But these moments are not failures. They are part of the shaping, like the stone that is polished not by soft cloth, but by rough wind and water. She becomes resilient not by escaping these moments, but by staying through them. And with time, the silence becomes symphonic. The routine becomes ritual. What once felt empty now feels essential. She is no longer a woman living without a man. She is a woman living with herself, completely, deliberately, sacredly. And so the journey unfolds. From chosen solitude, she grows roots. Daily discipline, she grows wings. And in the quiet rhythm of her life, she does not wait for love to arrive. She is love arriving. There is a silence in the world that many flee from. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of one's own self, unmasked, unfiltered, unaccompanied. When a woman lives alone, she becomes the quiet observer of her own becoming, not because she has been left behind, because she has chosen to stay with herself when others might abandon their own presence in favor of company. We are taught from a young age to be seen, to be reflected in the eyes of another, to find proof of our value in their gaze, their praise, presence. But what if the truest mirror is the still one, the one held by solitude? There is an old Zen teaching. A student once asked the master, "How do I see my true self?" The master handed him a bowl of water and said, "Wait until the ripples are gone." The student looked down, and only when the water had settled could he see his reflection clearly. In the same way, a life that is constantly stirred by relationships, approval, and noise cannot reflect truth. Only when the ripples fade, when the house is quiet, when the phone does not ring, when the evening brings no one to the door, does she begin to see herself clearly. The woman who lives alone becomes both the sculptor and the stone. She feels the weight of her own thoughts and learns not to escape them. Instead of being distracted by another's needs or desires, she becomes intimate with her own rhythms. She observes how joy rises without reason. She sits with her grief when it has no name. She walks through rooms where no one claps for her, and yet she blooms. In the hush of solitude, she learns what many never do, that healing is not about being fixed, but about being fully seen, first by oneself. Nature offers its own mirror. Consider the surface of a deep lake at dawn. When no wind moves, the surface becomes a perfect glass. Mountains, even the birds above, are reflected in stillness, but disturb the water and all becomes distorted. In the same way, the woman who lives alone begins to settle the waters of her mind. At first, what rises can be frightening: old memories, regrets, the echoes of former loves or past betrayals. But over time, she learns that these are not storms to be feared, clouds passing over her lake. She does not need to act. She needs only to observe. The philosopher Chuang Tzu once said, "Happiness is the absence of the striving for happiness." It is a paradox, and yet a woman who sits in solitude long enough begins to understand it. The more she seeks love outside of herself, the more elusive it becomes. When she ceases the search, when she turns inward not in resignation, but in reverence, she discovers a contentment that cannot be taken. There is a woman who each evening lights a single candle and sits beside it in silence. No guests arrive, no conversation fills the room, and yet each night she feels attended by something ancient and kind, her own presence. This is not a scene of loneliness. It is a ceremony of self. This path, however, is not without its shadows. There will be moments when memories stir like ghosts, when silence sharpens into sorrow. But if she stays, if she resists the urge to reach outward for distraction, she finds a surprising friend in that silence, herself undiluted. Not the version she performs for others, but the one she has always been. As the days pass, she becomes fluent in her own language. She reads the messages in her dreams. She listens to the wisdom in her breath. She remembers what once brought her joy as a child, and she allows herself to return to it, not for show, not for profit, but because it is hers. And so, in living alone, she no longer abandons herself. She watches as old masks fall away. No longer does she need to impress, to charm, to be chosen. She is not trying to become desirable. She is becoming real. From this sacred watching, another truth begins to blossom. She no longer needs to be chosen. In a world that trains women from girlhood to be selected by teachers, by lovers, by society, this shift is profound. To live without needing to be picked is to reclaim a form of spiritual sovereignty. It is to remember that your worth is not negotiable, not earned, not granted by another's gaze. A Shaolin tale tells of a monk who carved a wooden Buddha from a fallen tree. Many admired his work and asked him how he knew what to carve. The monk replied, "I did not carve the Buddha. I removed everything that was not it." So too, a woman who stops trying to be wanted begins to shed all that is not truly her. The painted smiles, the softened truths, compromises made to avoid rejection, they fall away. What remains is herself, uncarved and whole. She no longer bends to fit another's mold. She no longer walks into a room hoping to be seen. She sees herself. And because of this, she walks differently. She listens not to respond, but to understand. She speaks not to impress, but to reveal. Her presence is no longer a question. It is an answer. In daily life, this may be subtle. She may choose to spend her weekends walking among trees instead of attending parties that drain her. She may no longer smile when she does not feel joy. She may decline a second date, not because the man was cruel, because her inner voice whispered, "This is not your path. This is not arrogance. It is alignment." And when love arrives, and it will not arrive as a rescue, but as a resonance. She will not cling to it out of hunger, but welcome it as a guest, a partner, not a provider, a presence, not a purpose. Lao Tzu wrote, "When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." And this is what the woman alone begins to feel. Not superiority, not pride, but peace, the kind that allows her to sit with an open heart, yet not an empty one. She may walk beside another one day, but she no longer walks behind. The eagle that soars not to chase, but to rise. She moves with the wind, not against it. She is not impressed by charm. She does not mistake attention for affection. She knows her own soul now, and anything that asks her to dim it no longer feels like love. Inner knowing gives birth to gentleness. She is no longer in competition. She does not fear being alone, so she does not settle. Presence becomes a sanctuary, not just for herself, but for others. And should she ever love again, it will not be to feel needed. It will be to feel met. The world may not understand her. It may try to define her in terms of what she lacks. She no longer lives according to that map. She has found a compass within, and it always points home. She does not live without a man because she is incomplete. She lives this way because she has come to see that no one else can give her what she already carries. A woman who no longer needs to be chosen becomes magnetic not because she chases attention, but because she radiates presence. And so she walks the path of her own becoming. Alone, but never abandoned. Unaccompanied, but never unloved. The journey is quiet. The days are deliberate. And within that quiet, a new kind of beauty is born, not one that demands to be noticed, but one that transforms simply by existing. This, then, is the truth that waits in solitude. Not the ache of what is missing, but the return of what was never truly lost, herself. Entire, eternal, enough. There is a kind of love that does not come with fire or thunder. It does not rush in to rescue or sweep away. Instead, it drifts like mist across the hills at dawn, soft, unseen, but deeply felt. It is not loud. It does not knock. It waits until it is invited. When a woman lives alone long enough to know her own breath, her own rhythms, and her own mind, she does not fall in love with the idea of being completed. She has already made herself whole. If love arrives, it is not a salvation. It is a harmony, not the missing piece, but a note that joins a song already being sung. In the early mornings, before the sun rises fully, there is a moment in nature where everything is still. The air holds its breath. The birds have not yet broken the silence. This is the moment between night and day where the world does not strive, it simply is. The woman who has walked through solitude with intention learns to dwell in this space. She no longer searches for love with grasping hands. She listens. She aligns. And when a presence enters her life, calm, clear, grounded, she feels no urge to capture it. She welcomes it like the dawn welcomes light gently, naturally, without control. A story from the Shaolin temple tells of a young monk who wished to tame a wild deer. He chased it through the forest with food and soft calls. The deer always fled. One day, the monk stopped chasing. He sat beneath a tree, breathing deeply, becoming still. Days passed. He stayed. Until one morning, the deer came to him, drawn not by pursuit, but by peace. So it is with true connection. The woman who knows herself no longer seeks. She becomes. And in becoming, she draws only what resonates with her peace. This is not indifference. It is refinement. She has felt the false lights, relationships born from need, fear, or distraction. And she has chosen not to feed that fire again. Her solitude has taught her discernment. Not all love is love. Not all closeness is care. Real connection does not demand her to shrink, to soften her truth, to bend into a version more acceptable. Real connection meets her where she is and says, "Come as you are." The philosopher Epictetus once wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." She has internalized this. She no longer tries to control who stays, who loves, who sees her. Her peace is not for sale. Her presence is not a performance. When love arrives, it is not a conquest. It is a quiet recognition. In daily life, This may take the form of saying no to situations that once felt flattering but now feel misaligned. It may look like walking away from attention that lacks depth, or simply choosing to remain still rather than chasing what feels distant. She is no longer ruled by the need to be desired. She desires only what honors her peace. Love to her is not intensity. It is integrity, not urgency, but understanding. The waves may come, but she no longer builds her home on the surface. She has rooted herself in the seabed of her own being. And anything that does not honor that depth, no matter how dazzling, cannot stay. When love does come, it will not be with declarations or dramas. It will feel like a warm wind brushing the skin, unexpected. Welcome, unforced, and if it does not come, she is not waiting. She is already home. There is a final truth that grows in the soil of this path. Like a tree that took many seasons to appear above the ground, peace is not found in who lies beside you, but in how deeply you lie with yourself. So many spend their lives seeking comfort in companionship, but neglect the companionship of their own soul. They fear being alone in a room, for the silence echoes too loudly. But the woman who has chosen solitude with reverence no longer fears that silence. She sits with it, she listens, and in it she finds something most never touch, her essence. The Shaolin monks tell the story of a man who searched the mountains for a master to give him enlightenment. After years of wandering, he came upon an old woman sweeping her porch. She said nothing to him, offered no teachings, and barely looked up. In frustration, he asked, "Where can I find the truth?" She handed him the broom. "Sweep," she said. And so he did. Days passed, no words, no lessons, only sweeping. One morning, while sweeping, the man felt something shift. The rhythm of the motion, the feel of the earth, the sound of the wind. He was no longer separate from the act. In the simplicity, he found stillness, and in the stillness, the truth. So it is with the woman who lives alone. Her days may be filled with ordinary tasks, folding clothes, boiling rice, tending to a plant. But in those acts, done with presence, she begins to realize there is nothing missing here. Her life is not a waiting room. It is a temple. Nature shows us this again and again. The mountain does not seek attention, and yet it commands presence. The moon does not chase the sun, and yet it shines in its time. Peace is not loud. It does not arrive with applause. It arrives quietly when all the doors have been closed except the one that opens inward. The mystic poet Milarepa once wrote, "When you run after your thoughts, you are like a dog chasing a stick. Every time a stick is thrown, you run after it. Instead, be like a lion. When a stick is thrown, stay where you are and look at who threw it." She has become the lion. The woman who once chased meaning in others now sits in her own stillness and watches the mind. She no longer believes every story it tells. She no longer reacts to every passing thought. She watches. She breathes. She rests. Peace then is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of understanding. And from this peace, a subtle transformation begins. She becomes a source. Others feel it. They sit with her and speak less, breathe more. They notice that in her presence, they feel no need to prove or explain, because she herself is no longer seeking proof. In practical life, this may mean choosing slowness when the world urges haste. May look like spending a weekend alone, not as punishment, but as pilgrimage. Turning off the noise, not to escape, but to return. And yes, there may still be moments of longing, the desire to be held, to share, to be seen. But even these are met with tenderness. She no longer hides from them. She holds them like waves, knowing they will pass. Because she now knows the deepest intimacy begins within, she can lie with herself in full presence, mind at ease, breath steady, heart unguarded. She does not need to be touched to feel whole. She touches life with every conscious breath. And this, perhaps, is the final secret. Nothing truly meaningful has been left out of her life. It has only been waiting. In the silence, in the stillness, in the space she once feared. Now, she steps into that space, not with trepidation, but with reverence. She walks through her own life as one would walk through a forest temple, slowly, attentively, with gratitude for every stone, every leaf, every moment. She is not a woman missing anything. She is a woman who has returned to everything. There is no loneliness in a life lived in truth. There is only space. Space to breathe, space to become, space to remember who you were before the world told you what you needed. A woman alone is not waiting for someone to come. She is becoming someone worth meeting. And that whether you are a woman or man, whether you are alone or surrounded, is the real journey. To find in stillness what noise has hidden. Let that thought walk with you today, and perhaps walk with it again tomorrow.